Meanwhile, tonight, there's a fear that war could break out in Europe once again. And if it happens, it would emanate once again from the area of the Balkans. Here's what's going on. Serbia is putting its troops on high alert today because heavily armed Kosovo police have entered a Serb community in the northern part of Kosovo. They apparently fired tear gas and they rounded up more than 20 suspects who they say are mobsters. Serb authorities now say that they're putting their military on combat alert because of this. Joining us now is RT correspondent Alex Mihailovich, who has spent many years covering this tense region. We welcome Alex to our newscast. What's wrong, Alex, with sending police to arrest mobsters who happen to be Serbs? Because this is what the Kosovo Albanians would say that's all they did. They're cops and they're doing their job.
Well, let's be clear. There's mobsters in that area. Kosovo's known for mobsters. Kosovo in the 80s and 90s, especially, was one of the main entry point for drugs into Europe. And after the war happened there post-1999, arguably it still is. Now, here's the problem with that. Yeah, there's probably mobsters there, and Serbian mobsters work alongside Albanian mobsters who work alongside Bosnian mobsters, because the mob doesn't care what ethnicity you are. But when you have the government of Kosovo, who's made up of former KLA members, an organization that used to be a terrorist organization on the United States list of terror organizations, when you have them, these people who were once caused or were called mobsters and later called terrorists, arresting other mobsters, well, then you have an issue. The country is run by former KLA members. The Prime Minister and the President are both former commanders of the KLA. And this year they appointed a war criminal to be an advisor to the Prime Minister. This guy is an indicted war criminal accused of torture against Serbs. So in this situation, that's why you get this tension rising up and up, especially when you go in with KLA, former KLA members, with these special forces are made up of many of them as well, into a Serb area where civilians put up blockades and get hurt. That's when tensions rise, and of course Serbia is going to respond, and then you end up with this situation, and of course that could spiral out of control.
I get your point. In other words, they weren't really going after mobsters. They were going after Serbs, and they were using that as a potential excuse. By the way, I got to tell you something that I'm sure you've read already or know about. Among those arrested was a Russian diplomat. Now, what I've been reading, according to the Kosovo press, is that the police say, look, we didn't know that he was a diplomat. We just arrested the guy, and later on, when we found out he was a diplomat, we dealt with it. But so Russia is not responding kindly either to the arrest or to the explanation. Take a listen to what the Russian spokesperson is saying. Here it is. The detention took place in defiance of Russia's diplomatic immunity of a UN official. We regard this outrageous act as another manifestation of provocative policies by the Kosovo Albanians' top brass. What do you think of this, Alex?
Well, look, now they're saying there were two UN officials that were arrested. One happens to be a Russian. The UN has spoken out against this. This is something, many people call this, just an extension of what I believe is a proxy war that's been going on for over 2 decades. This all started back prior to 1999, when basically the United States and its allies and NATO, there was no room for out for the Serbs. They wanted a war. Madeleine Albright, Secretary of State at the time, she pushed this forward. And there was a reason for that was beyond just bombing the crap out of Serbia. What they wanted to do was three-tiered here. The euro, at that point, the currency, the euro, was very strong. During this war, it was knocked down a notch. The UN, the NATO wanted to send a message, hey, we're more important than you are, and they did that. At the same time, Russia, who wasn't as strong, was a baby bear back then, but it's a big bear now, they also wanted to send a message to Russia basically saying, hey, you're not going to be involved in any diplomacy here. We're not listening to you. We're doing whatever we want to do. And that's what's happening to this day. We're seeing that Kosovo really is a chip. It's always been in this game. The Balkans have been a chip. There was that Dayton Accord or agreement signed in 1995 in Dayton, Ohio, that for Bosnia, very much a great example, because what they did, they made Bosnia into an unfunctioning state. It still doesn't function properly because the makeup of it just doesn't make sense. They call the Balkans a powder keg for a reason, and that's why they created Bosnia the way it is right now. You can throw a flame in there, it'll stir it up. Same thing with Kosovo. If the U.S. wanted to de-escalate, if they wanted to shut things down right now, they could, and both the Serbs and Kosovo would listen. The U.S. has the power to create peace, but so far they just haven't pulled the trigger for peace. It's just been an area that has been just that powder keg that we've talked about since the First World War.
Escalate or de-escalate. That's what we'll be watching here at RT and on the news with Rick Sanchez. We're lucky to have Alex Mihailovich to report on this. Thank you, Alex. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Rick.
I'm Rick Sanchez. You found us on YouTube, and that's awesome. But you know what? I'm also live every night at 7 and 8 p.m. Eastern on DirecTV and Dish and cable and satellite, the RT app, and Pluto TV. I'll see you there.